I used to work the night shift at the front desk of an apartment building. The lobby area had a desk, and I was in charge of buzzing people in through the door. I was essentially a layer of security. I would ensure that whoever was coming into the building lived there or was a friend of somebody and had received approval to enter. My shift was from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., so there wasn't usually much action going on during my shift, especially after midnight. One night, I was in the middle of my shift, trying not to fall asleep. Suddenly, I saw movement on one of the cameras from the garage. The garage was attached to the building, but to get inside, you still needed to come up to the main doors and be buzzed in by me. Someone was walking through the garage towards the stairs that would take them towards the lobby area. I hadn't seen anybody drive into the garage and park their car, but I was pretty tired and could have missed it easily. I watched as the person entered the stairs and made their way up towards the door to get into the lobby. They immediately tugged to open the door, apparently not knowing that they had to be buzzed in by me. It was a younger man. He was maybe right around his 30s. He looked in at me through the glass, motioning for me to open the door. It was clear that he did not live here, so I walked over towards the entry doors, motioning for him to leave. The man started explaining that he was here to see his friend and needed to get in. I had received no warning about this man, and there was no note that would indicate that he was supposed to be granted access to the building. The man glared angrily at me when I once again said that I wasn't going to be letting him in. He began pounding on the door, and while his arms were raised, I saw that he had a gun tucked into his waistband as well. The man was quite strong, and I was genuinely worried that the glass might break. I scurried back to my desk, alerting the authorities, and letting them know that a man with a gun was attempting to enter the apartment building. After a few moments, the man stopped pounding on the glass, and once again glared at me. He shouted that he would be back, and disappeared down the stairway back towards the garage. I watched on the cameras as he exited the garage and disappeared outside into the night. I ended up only working that night shift a couple more weeks, not seeing the man again. I have no idea if he ever showed up overnight again since I had stopped working there, but I wish the next night shift worker good luck if they ever did or do see him again. I spend the nights working as a security officer. My job is to travel around to various buildings, mostly businesses that hire my company for security. I swing by each of these places multiple times at night, ensuring that nothing funny is going on and the building is secure. Honestly, my job is really boring. As you can picture that on a night-to-night basis, not much is going on around an office building. I'm required to walk around each entry point to the building, making sure that it's locked and secure. I have keys to all these buildings in case I need to go inside, but in the 3 months working this night shift, I never had to go inside a building. However, that all changed during a shift I had 2 weeks ago. I had reached my third building of the night, which was a smaller 4-story office building. I made my rounds around the perimeter of the building, shining my light up at windows ensuring they were intact, and pulling on doors making sure they were locked. I circled around to the back side of the building. When I did, I was shocked to see that a door was not only unlocked, but also propped open. I never had to deal with a situation like this before, and quite frankly, I was nervous to go inside the building. I maneuvered my way through the building, moving very slowly and shining my flashlight into every room and corner. It took me a while, especially since I was nervous, but I made my way through all 4 floors of the building without seeing anything unusual. I made my way back to the door that had been left open, removing the prop in the door and locking it behind me. I continued my rounds, making my way through the rest of the buildings that needed to be checked for the night. I decided to head back over to the office building that I had walked through earlier to make sure that everything was okay. I pulled my truck into the parking lot and began walking around the building doing rounds once more. To my surprise, the same back exit was once again unlocked and propped open. At this point, I was very confused. There wasn't supposed to be anyone still in the building this late, and there were no lights inside that I could see. I reluctantly entered the office building once again and searched it from top to bottom, this time even calling out multiple times to see if anyone was there. Once again, I saw and heard nothing unusual my entire trip throughout the building. I returned to the back exit and saw that the door was now closed. I hadn't unpropped the door when I first entered the building, but now the door was closed, and the brick that had been used to prop it open was nowhere in sight. Again, this was my first time having to enter a building while I had this job, so I was a little scared at this point. I quickly locked the door and hurried back to the safety of my truck. Nobody was supposed to be in that building, so I was relieved that I hadn't ended up seeing anybody during my rounds of the building. It was eerie to me, though, that during both of my searches of the building, somebody had been in there somewhere, evading me, and then slipped out the back door without me seeing them. I called the office building the next day, asking if anything important was missing or had been stolen, but nothing they were aware of was gone. I still currently work the security night shift job, but haven't had any nights like that one at the office building since then, thankfully. I'm retired now, but for a couple of years in my 50s, I worked a night shift in a mall. I was a custodian and would come in and clean once the mall had closed for the night. Most of my nights were spent cleaning up the food court areas as well as taking care of bathrooms. One night I was sweeping the floor in the food court area and I heard a fit of coughing coming from somewhere. I looked around the dimly lit food court area but didn't see anyone. A couple of times throughout my years working there, I would discover somebody or a group of people who had hidden in the mall and were doing a challenge of staying there overnight. I didn't see anyone, and I heard no further noises, so I just continued cleaning. If someone was trying to stay in the mall overnight, I'd see them eventually, unless they stayed put in one spot the entire time. About 15 minutes had passed, and I was wiping off tables now. Suddenly, a series of loud bangs startled me. I looked up and saw that a whole table and all the surrounding chairs had been knocked over onto the ground. I walked over to the items on the ground, which had happened near the edge of the food court. There was no one to be seen anywhere. I ventured down away from the food court a bit to see if I could see anyone running away or hiding. I was about to turn around back to the food court when I heard water running inside the women's bathroom. All the bathrooms at the mall had sinks that were motion sensors. Someone had to be inside of the bathroom, and I had a feeling that it was going to be the culprit I was looking for from the food court. The sink was still running as I slowly and as quietly as I could entered the bathroom. As I turned the corner into the bathroom, the water abruptly stopped running. There was nobody anywhere to be seen. I checked every stall and still nothing. I chalked it up to a faulty sensor on the sink and decided that I'd put in a work order for maintenance to fix it. Oddly enough, as I walked away from the bathroom, I heard the sink turn on again. I walked back to the food court, very confused and also a little spooked. I went about the rest of my night as usual, finishing my cleaning duties. A couple days later, I received an email from maintenance that there had been nothing wrong with the sink sensor and that it was functioning normally. From then on, at least once a week, I would hear the water running from the sink in that bathroom. For the rest of the time that I worked at the mall, I just accepted that I wasn't alone in that mall, and I stayed away from that bathroom. I never had any more incidents, though, with the mysterious knocking over tables and chairs in the food court. Thankfully, that spirit, or whatever it was, stayed in the women's bathroom. I used to work night shift security, and by far the scariest thing I had ever encountered was when I chanced upon a robbery in progress. I was patrolling one of our assets around the start of my shift at 10 p.m. Walking around the perimeter of the building, everything looked in order, except an air conditioner near ground level that had fallen out of place. The air conditioner didn't fit well in the hole, so there had been a wooden plank to prop it up and keep it in place. I assumed that the stick had somehow been nudged and the AC unit had fallen out of place. It wasn't very heavy, so I propped the air conditioner back into its hole in the wall, positioning the stick to keep it in place. I continued my walk around the building, reaching the next window, and to my surprise, someone was there. The light in the room wasn't on, but there was a bit of light entering the room from the hallway that the office space was connected to. It wasn't uncommon for a worker to stay working late on a project, or either use their code to re-enter the building and grab something they had forgotten earlier. I pressed my face to the glass to see who it was and if I would recognize them. Once I was peering through the glass, I could make out that it definitely wasn't an office worker. The person was wearing a ski mask over their face. They noticed my face pressed up against the window and hustled out of the room. Realizing that a robbery was in progress, I quickly put two and two together, figuring out that the fallen air conditioning unit hole was most likely the way they had entered the building. I immediately pressed a button on my phone in an app that my company used to notify police if they needed to send cars to my location. I was still standing only about 100 feet away from the AC unit, so I ran over to see if that was going to be how the perpetrator would attempt to escape. Sure enough, shortly after I had reached the AC unit, it came flying out at me as the intruder pushed it forcefully from inside. The AC unit was knocked straight backwards into my chest, and I watched as the person in the ski mask flew through the hole in the wall, barreling into me and the AC unit that I had somehow managed to catch. The suspect ran into a nearby neighborhood, but the police arrived soon after and had them cornered in a city block, shutting down the entire street and eventually capturing them. It felt good to say that I had stopped an attempted robbery in progress, but I'll never forget the image of the person flying through a dark hole in the wall directly into me. It was quite terrifying, and I had nightmares about it for the next couple nights afterwards. I worked at a hotel for many years when I was younger. I eventually got promoted and earned better pay and shift hours, but when I was first working there, I was on the night shift. The night shift was from 10 p.m. to 8 a.m., and the only workers in the building would be me and another person working at the front desk check-in area. The hotel wasn't a 5-star hotel by any means, but it was fairly nice, but most people we encountered and checked in the middle of the night weren't problematic. One night at about 2 a.m., a grumpy-looking middle-aged man came in asking for a hotel room for the night. We got him set up with his room, and then asked for the payment before giving him his room keys. He informed us that he wasn't able to pay currently, but would pay before he left in the morning. We clearly weren't allowed to do that, so we informed him that he could either pay for his room now, or he wouldn't be allowed to stay here. The man got quite angry and proceeded to cuss us out. The other guy I was working with that night, who was much more confrontational than I am, stepped out from behind the front desk, telling the man to leave or he'd make him leave. I was about ready to call the cops, when all of a sudden, the man took off into the hotel, running down the hallway. Both of us workers jogged out into the hallway a bit to see him enter a stairway and appear to head downstairs towards the hotel's basement. The hotel's basement was already creepy enough as it was, being much older than the rest of the hotel and having a bunch of storage stacked high everywhere. My coworker wanted me to go down there with him, but as I said, it was already creepy enough without the possibility of a crazy man down there. I called the cops, and they came to search the basement, where they found the man hiding in the storage area with a knife in his hand. They were able to detain him without anybody getting hurt. I'm so glad that I didn't let my coworker talk me into us going down there. Who knows what the man would have done if it had only been us two to find him down there instead of a group of police officers. We didn't get any more shady characters like that during the time that I was on the night shift, but I still felt a bit relieved when I got promoted and was able to work regular hours during the daytime.